mixes Uncharted-style traversal with combo-driven combat and puts the ability to interact with memory at the core of its design. Last week, we visited the team in Paris, going hands-on with the game's first 2 missions. We were also able to speak extensively with the creators to bring you a deeper understanding of Remember Me's world, mechanics, and the development process, bringing it all together.
Cyberpunk, is always about identifying an interesting technological trend in today's world and then extrapolating it into the future. We decided to focus on social networks, the biggest thing since the internet. And we were like, okay, what could that be like in 70 years time, in 2084? And then that's when the idea of digitizing your memories came about, and that became like really Remember Me.
The main idea of the project was to create a new civilization based on human memory management. Everything is kind of related to memory in the game. So we had to make a lot of research of how exactly the human memory is supposed to work. We know now for sure that every human being has more than one memory. You can forget who you are and what is your past, but you will still be able to drive a car, so you don't forget anything.
In this future, the memories you have can be digitalized, and so you take an organic form to something that is digital. So all of these informations had to be inside the music. I said, let's take an acoustic form and run it through an electronic processing and digitalize it. We don't use synth. We take this acoustic orchestra and we process it. So you would feel there is a synthesizers in the back, but it's not. It's the orchestra being processed. And this is how all the idea of this Neo Paris, this world, is based on. It's about, organism becoming digitalized.
We ended up doing Remember Me in Paris, but in the beginning that was not what it was. The code name for the game was Adrift, and one of the main themes of that game was global warming. We thought about Asia, we thought about America, but all those places had been done, and we were like, well, why not Paris? We live there.
Paris is an old city with a lot of history, a lot of past, and we wanted to keep the memory of Paris. So we tried to keep the old buildings, the sculptures, the foundation of the city, and we built the sci-fi elements on top of it.
It's a perfect place to build, giant sci-fi structures upon, because the skyline is so flat, apart from the Eiffel Tower.
So we have 3 big parts of the city. What in the beginning in episode 1 you are is the lowest part of Paris with what we call the leapers, which are just memory junkies that completely lost their mind. Then in the middle of episode 1 you go to a more upper version of the Deep Paris, where you have still where you meet Tommy in the leaking brain. You have still the poor guys, but they are still working together to survive.
The low Paris is where the people are still okay, like humans. They are still kind of natural. So the contrast is that you start in a slum that is kind of dark and muddy, and you're like, oh, it doesn't look good, but it feels warm.
And then, of course, when you go to episode 2, it's a more standard version of the city where the normal people are living, and you will see the very rich people later in the game in the high, what we call the high Paris.
It is in Paris that had been created this new technology, the Sensen technology, the capacity to digitalize human memory. This gave Neo Paris the power to rebuild itself again, because it gave the city and people inside the city huge economical power.
Since we wanted to keep the old feeling of Paris, adding a layer of augmented reality in front of old buildings was a good way to give contrast and to give this sci-fi feeling. So since in Remember Me everyone has a Sensen implant, so everyone has an augmented reality device in their mind, so the companies can flood people with advertisements. We worked hard with the narrative team in order to create a lot of fake brands in the future, and we tried to tell the story of the city with all these small details, like the advertising, but also with the graffiti, which tells a lot of stuff from the heroist, And we try to bring all this together in order to get a good environmental narration.
The two most important things you could say about Nilin is that, first of all, she's a memory hunter. She can enter someone else's memory and steal information directly from her brain. She's a member of an underground movement called the Errorist. The Errorist they don't believe in the Sensen civilization, or in fact they think they are a big danger in this kind of technology, and they're trying to fight it.
Everybody's counting on you!
The audience and the public in the Sensen universe, they have not been forced to be part of that. They are wanting to be part of this new technology, and they don't see the danger.
Nilin is somehow a bug inside this city. She is like a glitch to the city. We wanted to reflect her glitch inside the music, so you're gonna have a violin string, a violin sustain, do like becoming digitalized, and then there's the glitch. That's Nilin.
The second important thing about her is that she has lost her identity. Her memory has been wiped out at the beginning of the game. She's asking herself a lot of questions about who she is and who she were, on what everything is about. And that was, for me, on a narrative point of view, it was very important to create a main character who has no idea of what this world is about, because the player will be exactly in the same situation.
We want the music to evolve as Nilin is herself evolving from becoming someone that is totally amnesiac, and she starts to understand what's going on. So the music starts to be kind of, brightful and okay to very dark because of the story.
Even if the general mood of the game, not the game but this universe, is quite dark, I hope there is enough funny secondary characters or scenery to make the player smile sometime. For example, Headache Tommy, the bartender, he's quite a funny character, in fact.
Similar to Uncharted or Prince of Persia, Remember Me has you jumping and climbing through various hazards, often with structures falling away beneath your feet.
Get off of me!
We really have this wonderful, well-built and consistent world, both from a narrative perspective and also from an art perspective. So a huge part of the intention behind the traversals is to actually let the players enjoy that. And we introduce also new environmental storytelling elements, like that place in the demo today where you're actually traversing across, flipping panels, and those panels actually are about, the architect that you're going to hack into, and the big guy that you meet at the end. The idea behind Remember Me's combat system was to create a combo-based system that fit the action-adventure recipe. So I didn't want players to have to learn, 100 combos and different timings. So the idea was that, they would only get, 3 or 4 combos. The inputs would be, set from the beginning. But then what they would customize is the effect of those combos, and they need to adapt, to have different tactics and strategies depending on the enemies and the gameplay situations that they meet.
Each combo is built with slots to equip with unlockable elements called presents. The farther down a string a present lies, the more effective it is. There are power presents to do more damage and regen presents to recover health. Special attacks can be used more frequently by equipping cooldown presents, and later there are chain presents, although they weren't available for us to try in this demo. So far, it doesn't seem that Nilin will guard or counter attacks, but timing and dodging are important to success, and you can continue your combo after you dodge.
The fights are something that we worked a lot in terms of music, because we wanted the fight to be as organic as possible. We wanted within the fight to have, depending how you play, the music to react.
We see this concept in action right from some of the game's first battles. As we are successful with our combos, a vocal layer sings memory in different chords. However, if we get hit or interrupted, you'll hear that layer drop out.
Of course, we have, so for fights, this connection, but for other fights, we have no connection. Or sometimes it's like different phases, because we didn't want to normalize the experience of the gamer. It's the same mechanic, but the feeling is different.
Dealing and taking damage fills a focus gauge to unleash specials like Sense and Fury, which lets you freely unleash quick attacks. Plus, doing consistent damage to an enemy puts them in a daze, giving you an opportunity to finish them with a memory overload.
There is no blood violence in the game, but we really wanted the memory overload to be powerful and still very violent. So you have all those pictures of memories coming out of the head of the guy, like we are wiping his memory, and it's quite brutal, but it's not in a gory way. So, for example, when Nilin is hit, we won't have blood, or we just have those huge glitches on the picture showing that something went wrong, and I think it blends well together with everything we're dealing with and talking about.
This idea that I really wanted to have in the game, which was the butterfly effect. You know, one thing can change everything. At some point we had it that, you know, the whole Memory Remix was played in someone's first-person perspective. There was no text on the screen. You had to pretty much guess everything. And actually, when we tested it with different people, we realized that, you know, being able to elaborate some expectation about what your interaction was going to do with that line of text, and then be surprised or be deceived by what happened with it. If you had more freedom, the pacing was just not right.
I think the biggest challenge was to design the look of the Memory Remix. At first we used simply a realistic setting, a realistic scene with the full room, and just put a sepia filter on top of it. But it wasn't working. We didn't have the feeling it was inside someone's memories. It was just giving the feeling that it was in the past or an old movie playing. When you try to remember something, you don't remember everything clearly. You will remember the faces of someone important to you, or you will remember some words on a paper, but you won't remember what color were the walls. Or so we tried to use that in our Memory Remix art direction, and we removed what was not important, to just focus on the important part of the memory and to play with symbolism.
When we introduced Remember Me to the world at Gamescom last summer, people were asking me, well, you know, are there several outcomes to the Memory Remix? And I was saying, well, no, you know, it's a linear narrative structure, but multiple outcomes is something that we had in the beginning, and it's extremely hard to have one objective in the real world, one objective in the Memory Remix, and several interactions and many combinations, and, you know, it gets exponential so quickly that people get lost very easily. But at the same time, I want them to have some freedom to explore other things. You have memory bugs whereby you kill the person that you're trying to remix in their own memory, so, you know, because they can't remember that they are dead, so you have to rewind again.
What I really appreciate is that most of the players who start testing the game, they often don't feel quite right about what Nilin is doing. She's dealing with manipulating other people's memory. So this is actually, yes, ethical question. If anybody can delete things from your past and make you believe that this really happened, even if it's wrong or false, you really deal with the identity of your target. There is a great danger in that kind of decision.
Based on its opening act, Remember Me is shaping up to be an intriguing action-adventure so far, and the integration of memory saturates every element from avoiding detection to securing intel from prominent targets. Stay tuned to GT for more details as Remember Me approaches release this May.